During a corporate launch party, my sister snapped into the mic. "She's a great worker, be not much sting though." I smiled, documented everything, and over 14 years, controlled internal promotions, cut funding to her projects. And when she finally tried to run her own company, I led the boycott that killed it before launch. She lost everything. Her descendants live in rented apartments, still whispering about the fortune their grandmother destroyed by underestimating the wrong person. I don't think people truly understand what humiliation does to you until it's done by someone who shares your blood. It was 2010 in Seattle at the Redditors corporate launch party. They rented out this glass-walled ballroom overlooking the water. Wine was flowing, people were dressed to impress, and the mood was bright until it wasn't. I had spent 8 months overseeing logistics for a new government contract that was going to triple the company's size. I worked nights, missed birthdays, held everything together with duct tape and spreadsheets. That night, they were giving out plaques and nods to the core team. I didn't expect a parade, just a little acknowledgement. When the mic got passed around, people were saying nice things, thanks to the team, proud of the work, that kind of stuff. Then it landed in Dana's hand. My sister. My older sister. She smiled like it was nothing and said, "She's a great worker, be not much sting though." The whole room burst into laughter. I stood there holding a champagne glass, my name still echoing on the plaque in my hand. My manager gave me a side glance like, "That was weird." A few people laughed too hard. Some avoided my eyes. I smiled, didn't say a word. But in my head, I wasn't thinking about how to feel better. I was thinking about how to remember every single detail. The date, the people, the sound of her laugh. I documented everything. And I made a promise to myself right there, with that same tight smile frozen on my face. I would make her regret it. Not today, not tomorrow, but I'd wait. I'd rise. And when the time came, I'd destroy her, slow, silent, and permanent. The rise. Getting the keys, I didn't start right away. That's not how you build something that lasts. I spent the next 3 years proving myself to every executive in operations, finance, and resource management. I didn't just play the game, I helped redesign the damn board. I volunteered for the awful projects no one wanted. Took the 4:30 a.m. calls with vendors in Asia. I never complained. Never asked for credit. Just made sure the people who mattered knew I could be trusted. By 2013, I was looped into resource approval boards, tiny closed-door groups that decided which projects got funded, which teams got expanded, and who got promoted. People assumed we just rubber-stamped things. They didn't realize the power we held. Including Dana. She was still floating on charm. Still running the marketing innovation team. Like it was her personal playground. Still cracking jokes about me at family dinners. She's in logistics. Or was it compliance? Something where you alphabetize. I'm the loud one. She's the quiet one. Our parents used to joke I was the fire, and she was the filing cabinet. They all laughed. I smiled. And I started phase 1. Phase 1. Choke the budgets every 6 months. Dana's team would submit new pitches, new apps, rebranding ideas, market initiatives. They weren't all bad. Some were even promising. But all I had to do was delay funding, or redirect the money to higher priority initiatives. I wasn't the final decision maker, but I didn't need to be. I just planted doubt, framed things differently, made sure her budgets came in just over the limit. I used her own reputation against her history of big, bold ideas that often fizzled out. Over time, fewer of her projects got picked. Her metrics started to slide. She didn't know why. One year, she brought in a concept called Pulse for real-time customer sentiment analysis. She brought donuts to the boardroom. Came in smiling. I made sure someone brought up a similar tool already in development. We smiled and said we'd circle back. We never did. She didn't understand how she was losing. She started looking over her shoulder at work, wondering why the tides were shifting. I stayed silent. Phase 2. Blocked the ladders in 2016. Dana was up for a VP spot. The other candidate was less experienced but solid safe. I didn't even need to vote. I just shared a neutral review from a cross-functional lead that subtly mentioned Dana's abrasive communication style and difficulty adjusting to long-term feedback. She didn't get the job. She cried in her office. I know because I saw her through the glass wall. She hid it well when she came to the holiday party a week later. Told everyone it was no big deal. That same year, I suggested a slight reorg to centralize communications. Half her responsibilities were shifted to a newer, shinier team. She called it politics. I called it progress. By 2018, she was still a director. Same title. Fewer resources. More red tape. She stopped speaking at conferences. She skipped Thanksgiving. I pretended to care. But inside, I was just getting started. Phase 3. Her big dream in 2020, Dana gave notice. Said she was launching her own company. Hive Minds. It's time I did something that reflected my vision, she told me at dinner. Good for you, I said. Proud of you. She believed me. She sent me early investor decks, asked for advice. I smiled, nodded, and took notes. Every contact. Every plan. Every timeline. She announced the company in January 2021. Big launch party. Beautiful website. She looked radiant in the photos. The night of the launch, she raised a glass and said, "This is for everyone who ever doubted I had my own sting." That was it. That was the last straw. The next day, I opened a private folder on my drive titled, Hive Kill Plan. Phase 4. The kill plan. My plan wasn't fast. That's not how real destruction works. I started with her vendors. I recognized a few names from her investor deck, smaller firms easily influenced. I made a few off-record calls. Just a heads up, I'd say. Hive Minds has some red flags in its structure. Overextended. Overpromised. I never said she was unethical. I never said she was lying. I just planted seeds. Then I moved to my old contacts in the corporate world, some of whom now worked in private tech investment firms. They trusted me. I'd helped them vet projects before. I dropped subtle red flags in their inboxes, highlighted risks, told them to wait 6 months and reassess. The early investment rounds dried up. Dana had front-loaded expenses, offices, branding, consultants. She expected funding to keep rolling in. When it didn't, she started cutting back. Quietly at first. Let a few contractors go. Then came the layoffs. She tried to pivot, rebranded the pitch, claimed she was going lean by design. That's when I dropped the hammer. The boycott. I reached out to a few corporate clients she was courting. Not directly. I used proxies, former colleagues, friends of friends. Each one had a story to share about Dana. Her failure to follow through, her poor leadership style, her tendency to burn bridges. Some stories were true. Others were adapted. The campaign didn't need to be public. It just needed to be consistent. Whispers in the right ears. Just be careful. She's not who you think. One client dropped her 2 weeks before contract finalization. Another ghosted her after 6 months of negotiations. The dominoes fell quickly after that. By late 2021, Hive Minds had one client and no capital. The family eruption that Thanksgiving, Dana came to dinner with hollow eyes and a fake smile. Everyone knew something was wrong. Halfway through the meal, she turned to me and said, out of nowhere, "You always did like the long game, didn't you?" I didn't flinch. "I don't know what you mean." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You never got over that one joke, did you?" The table fell silent. I looked at her, calm as ever. "It wasn't just one joke, Dana." She stood up and left before dessert. Her daughter, Ava, started crying in the car. Her husband yelled at her in the driveway. Phase 5. Collapse. By early 2022, Hive Minds was gone. Employees laid off. Office lease broken. Dana filed for bankruptcy and moved into a rental. Her husband, who had poured half his retirement into the company, was furious. They started fighting more often, louder. In May, he walked out. Told her he couldn't keep living in the fallout of your ego. That's a direct quote. I know because my cousin told me. She was there when he packed up. Her son Devin dropped out of college that fall. He said it was too expensive. Said he'd rather work and save. Her daughter started picking up shifts at a frozen yogurt place. I didn't celebrate. Not out loud. But every time someone said her name, I felt it. That cold satisfaction in my chest. Twist. She found a name in late 2023. I got a call from a restricted number. I didn't answer. Then I got an email. No subject. No body. Just the link. It was to a private forum post on an old industry board, anonymous, but detailed. Someone had pieced together my connections, my rise through the company, the timing of funding changes, the boycotts, the delays. It wasn't proof, but it was close. And it was signed. Now I know. She had figured it out. After I read the post, I stared at the screen for a full hour. My chest was tight, not with guilt but with something harder. Contempt maybe. Or the realization that Dana wasn't completely broken. Not yet. She was trying to fight back. She didn't name me in the forum, but she didn't need to. Anyone with context and a decent memory could figure it out. Especially anyone still working in ops, where my influence lived like smoke in the walls. 3 weeks later, an anonymous complaint was filed with Virioteca's compliance department. Accusation: abuse of authority, conflict of interest, targeted sabotage of a former employee. Guess who the complaint was about? It wasn't enough to stick. No names, no direct evidence. But it forced an internal review. I had to sit through 2 interviews with legal. I played calm, professional, called the claims absurd, deeply personal, and unsubstantiated. Still, the message was clear. She wanted to drag me into the light. What I didn't see coming was Devin, her son, my nephew. He was always polite with me, quiet, respectful. But now that he was out of college and bitter, with a job he hated and a family he resented, Dana found a weapon in him. She told him everything. Or at least her version of it. He started messaging people on LinkedIn. Low-level mid-tier folks who had worked with both of us. Asking vague questions. Phishing. One of those people forwarded me a screenshot. Did my aunt ever talk to you about hive minds before it failed? Do you think someone from inside Viriotech might have had a reason to sabotage my mom? I felt the blood drain from my face. I realized Dana wasn't just trying to get revenge. She was building a case. It got worse. A podcast episode dropped in March 2024. Niche tech podcast, but it had a small loyal following. The guest was DW, a pseudonym, but the voice was unmistakable. Dana. She told her version of the story, how her company was strangled in the crib, how someone close to her manipulated funding streams, and whispered lies to kill her dreams. She never said my name, but the timeline matched. The city, the job roles, the sister dynamic. She even referenced the party in 2010. I joked about her being a worker bee. I didn't know I'd touched a landmine. That line hit hard. The episode got passed around. It didn't go viral, but it didn't need to. A few old colleagues heard it. A couple of journalists reached out. No one published anything. But it got quiet around me for a while. Too quiet. By fall of 2024, I noticed something had changed at work. I wasn't invited to the quarterly strategy summit. My budget committee role was put on rotation. My promotion to SVP, which I'd been all but promised, suddenly wasn't aligned with leadership vision. Someone was pulling strings. And then, at a company offsite in Tahoe, I saw it. Dana. In the lobby. She wasn't working there. But she was speaking, invited as a guest on a panel about resilience after startup collapse. She saw me. Smiled. That night, I sat in my hotel room staring at the ceiling. This was no longer a silent war. It was open. She had nothing left to lose. And she was willing to bleed if it meant I bled too. I had a choice. I could pull the final thread, something irreversible, or walk away. But walking away would mean letting her win. And I wasn't sure I could do that. That week after Tahoe, I stayed home from work under the excuse of burnout. It wasn't a lie. I was unraveling. 14 years of silent planning, careful control, it was all starting to crack. Dana wasn't just surviving. She was retaliating. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the one pulling the strings. I felt exposed. But here's the truth I hadn't admitted, not even to myself. I didn't just want her to fail. I wanted her forgotten. Erased. And I had one more move. In 2011, when I was first rising through the company, I had helped the internal audit team flag an issue in the marketing department. Nothing criminal, just unethical optics. Dana had pushed through a high-budget branding contract with a design firm that her then-husband had financial ties to. It was waved off at the time as a misunderstanding, but the paperwork was still archived. I had a copy. I forwarded it anonymously to a former Videotech board member with just 3 words. Thought this might interest you. Within a week, Dana received notice that Videotech was reopening an internal ethics review from her time as director. Nothing major, but enough to make waves. The podcast folks dropped her from their upcoming speaker series. One of her freelance clients canceled a consulting session, citing PR sensitivity. She posted a vague message on social media about being smeared and targeted by shadows. And then silence. For 2 months. No new posts. No LinkedIn updates. Just a dead, echoing quiet. And then the news came. Her rental was listed. She'd moved again, smaller place, closer to a budget grocery store. Her son started working full-time at a tire shop. Her daughter dropped out of school, citing mental health reasons. And Dana? She started a blog. Anonymous, of course. But I knew her writing. Every post read like a slow confession. My biggest mistake wasn't trusting the wrong people. It was thinking I could outmaneuver someone who had nothing else but patience. It happened in 2025, at our mother's 80th birthday in Spokane. Dana came alone. Worn out, thin, like a woman who had burned everything she had to stay standing. Her hair was grayer than I remembered. Her eyes sharper. She walked straight up to me in the backyard, handed me a glass of wine and said, "You did all of it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. She sipped, looked out at the trees. "I deserved some of it, but not all. You buried me, and I still don't know which part of me pissed you off the most." I stayed silent for a long time. Then I said, "It wasn't the joke. It was that you never thought I mattered. Even when I was right in front of you." She nodded slowly, set the glass down. Then she really looked at me and said, "Well, now you do." I didn't return to Videotech after my leave. I resigned 2 months later. Quietly.
No announcements.
Just walked away. My reputation never fully recovered. There were whispers. People kept their distance. Promotions I used to hand out stopped coming my way. My network thinned. I started consulting. Nothing flashy. Enough to live. Enough to stay out of sight. Dana's kids still live in rentals. Still whisper about the empire their grandmother lost. They know something happened, but not everything. Just that she once had power, and someone took it from her. And every now and then, I read her blog. She writes about failure, forgiveness time. Not revenge. That was my obsession. And it cost me everything.